Dear friends, welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege to read Parshas Balak. And in the Parsha we read about Balak, the king of Moab, who is a little bit at his wit's end about how to deal with the impending Jewish threat. The Jewish people have been conquering right and left, Baruch Hashem quickly making their approach into Eretz Yisrael. And Balak realizes that he cannot battle the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, with conventional means. So he hires Bilam, a Gentile prophet, who is known for his close connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in an effort to curse the Jewish people, to stall or to perhaps even prevent their entry into Eretz Yisrael. And we know the story. The story is every single time that Bilam opens his mouth to try to go ahead and curse the Jewish people, not only does he fail in cursing them, but he delivers the most beautiful and prolific praise. Some of it's so beautiful that in fact it's even incorporated into our daily davening. Things like Matovu Ohalecha Yaakov, how beautiful or how good are your tents, Yaakov. I want to share with you an interesting kind of moment in this story. So we know in the beginning, at first, Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Bilam, don't go because it's not going to work. Whatever you're going to try to do, you're going to try to curse the Jewish people. You can't keep Baruch Hu. They're blessed. You can't curse them. But finally, Bilam persists, and Kadosh Baruch Hu says essentially, fine, go. So the Torah says something very interesting. The Torah says, Vayakam Bilam baboker. This is in Perek, Chaf Beis, Pasuk Chaf Aleph, chapter 22, verse 21. Bilam got up in the morning, Vayachavoshes asono. He saddled his donkey, Vayelech im Sarei Moab. And he goes with the messengers of Bilam, he goes with the agents of Moab. Okay, incredible. Rashi HaKadosh points at something very interesting. Rashi says, wow, Bilam was a chashuv guy. He was very important. So why is he saddling his own donkey? And from here, Rashi says something very beautiful. Rashi says, Mikan shehasina mekalkeles es ashura. From here we see that hatred disrupts the natural order. Shechavashu ba'atzmo. In other words, Bilam was so consumed with hatred that literally, again, this intense emotion disrupts rational thinking, disrupts normal order, and therefore, whereas on a regular day, Bilam would have had someone to go ahead and saddle his donkey, but the animosity was so great, the hatred was so great, that Bilam saddled his own donkey. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbe Shalom said, Drasha, Kvar kidamcha Avram aviem. You think you're the first person to saddle your donkey to go out and to, so to speak, fulfill the will of God? No. Avram Avinu already preempted you. Shneimar, Vayashkim Avraham baboker vayachavoshes chamoro. Because the Bible says by the Akedah, by the binding of Yitzchak, when Avram Avinu was willing to sacrifice his one and only son. So the Torah tells us that Avram Avinu got up early in the morning and he saddled his donkey. And in fact, there Rashi says, Rashi bothered by the same thing. Avram, why are you saddling your donkey? You've got a guy for that. Why are you saddling your donkey? And Rashi says the same lashon, Mikan sha'ahava mekalkeles ashura. Rashi says over there, you see that love disrupts the natural order, the normal progression. So it's interesting. Here by Bilam, it's sina mekalkeles ashura. Hatred, animosity disrupts. Shura literally means a line, but it means it's the natural seder, the natural order. And by Avram, it's av mekalkeles ashura. Love disrupts the natural order. Now, what's fascinating to see is the commonality over here between Avram and Bilam. Obviously, Lahavda Elef Alfei Rivei Avdalos. They're fundamentally distinct people, separate people. But just to point something fascinating, the Shura represents the natural order of life. Right? The Shura represents Seder. There's an order to things. And what Rashi is highlighting to us is something very profound, which is intense emotion really uproots or disrupts a seder, a natural order. And we know this, right? When we are having intensely emotional experiences, no matter what the rhythm of my day normally is, that intense emotional experience disrupts the rhythm. Everything else stops. So Avram Avinu has intense love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That disrupts the natural order. There's a seder. The seder is someone else saddles Avram Avinu's donkey and then he goes out to do his thing. But that intense emotion disrupts it. Ultimately, Bilam also has a guy who goes out and saddles his donkey. But that intense emotion for Bilam was animosity, hatred of Klal Yisrael, disrupted that emotion. Tremendous idea. On one hand, the power and also the problem with intense emotion. Because at the end of the day, life is all about a shura. Life is all about having a line, having a seder, having an order, right? A life without seder, a life without order is a life that remains fundamentally unaccomplished. Because without an order, without a seder, without a shura, you can't move yourself from point A to point B. Emotion is such a powerful tool, but unchecked emotion disrupts the natural seder, the natural order of life. But on one hand, you can't have life without emotion, but you can't have life that is all emotion. A life without emotion is a dry, lifeless existence. A life with, I'll call it unchecked emotion, is a life where the shura, the seder, the order, the schedule, the natural progression of things is constantly being upended. So I think it's interesting that Rashi points out something fascinating, both by Bilam and by Aram. What's the common denominator between Bilam and Avram? They're both great people in their own right. Granted, Bilam experienced a profound downfall, but understand, Bilam was also communicating with God, which means that he definitely must have been up there. The fundamental common denominator between a Bilam and an Avram is that 9 out of 10 times they had a shura, they had a line, they had a seder, they had an order, they had a schedule, they had a plan. And that's why Rashi points out one time where the shura was disrupted. For Avram Avinu, it was the morning of the Akedah. Just there was so much intense emotion that it upended the totality of his line, of his seder, of his order. For Bilam, the morning that he went to curse Klal Yisrael, so much intense emotion. For him, it was hatred of Klal Yisrael that it upended everything. But you see, aside from that morning of the Akedah for Avram and the morning when Bilam went with the messengers of Moab, what made them great is that they lived life with a shura. They lived life with a seder, with a line, with an order, with a plan, with a schedule. Because if you don't map out your life, if you don't map out, forget about your life, if you don't map out your day, what you want to accomplish, how you want to accomplish it, what are the goals for today, the goals for this week, the goals for this month, the goals for this year? Yes, they may change a million times over. But just because the plan may change doesn't mean you don't have to make the plan. You need a seder. You need a shura. You know, in Daf Yomi just this past week, we had a beautiful, beautiful Gemara of Rav Pinchas ben Yair on Daf Chaf Amud Beis 20b in Avodah Zarah. And Rav Pinchas ben Yair essentially says, you know, we're not going to go through the whole Gemara, but Rav Pinchas ben Yair says something very beautiful. He says, Torah mevili de zehirus. Learning Torah brings one to a sense of zehirus. Literally means like awareness. Awareness for the avoidance of sin. Zehirus mevili de zrizos. Awareness and therefore avoidance of sin brings a person to a certain level of alacrity, where it's a performance of positive mitzvahs. And Pinchas ben Yair goes step to step to step to step. What is Pinchas ben Yair highlighting for us? You want to be successful in life? You need a plan. You need a plan. There has to be a shura. There has to be a seder. And Avram only becomes an Avram because there was a plan. Of course, the plan changed. That he had to pivot a million times, but he pivoted to a different plan. He changed to a different. But at no point in time was Avram Avinu ever without a shura, without a line, without a plan, without a progression. What's the proof? Because the one time that he didn't have a plan, the Torah goes out of its way to highlight it. Vayachavosh Avram baboker, Vashke Avram baboker, Vayachavosh chamor. Avram got up early in the morning and he saddled his donkey. That was the one time. The one time he didn't have a plan. A Bilam. What makes Lahavdil? What makes a Bilam a great personality? He could have been even greater. What made him great? He had a shura. How do I know that? Because the one time he didn't have a plan, the Torah goes out of its way to highlight it. Vayashkem Bilam baboker, Vayakam Bilam baboker, Vayachavosh es asono. He changed the shur. He changed the manner. Pinchas ben Yair. You need a plan. You want to be successful in life. A leads to B. B leads to C. C leads to D. D leads to E. Make a plan. Make a progression. Make a shura. Make a seder. Make a schedule. And in fact, if you take a look a little bit later on in the parsha, one of the most striking psukim that, of course, is teeming with contemporary relevance for our day and age as well, one of the most beautiful brachas that Bilam delivers to Klal Yisrael. He says, "Hein am kelavi yakum uke'ariyis nasa." You know, it's beautiful. And you know, in Eretz Yisrael now, you can see there are billboards with this pasuk on it, and it's incredible to see the billboards, the pasuk, right? Hein am kelavi yakum. Bilam's talking about us. We are a nation that rises like a lion, uke'ariyis nasa, and literally again leaps like a lion cub. or I should say gets up like a lion cub and leaps like a lion. So in the billboards in Herzl, you can see it has this pasuk and a picture of a lion and the jets flying overhead. Inspiring. So Bilam says, so it's interesting. So what does this mean? That Klal Yisrael, we are like a lion cub and we get up and we leap like a lion. What does this mean? And Rashi HaKadosh says something beautiful. Rashi says, Kishein omdim mishnasam shachris. When Klal Yisrael gets up in the morning, we are like a lion in that we grab mitzvahs. What does this mean? Lilbosh tzitzis, to put on our tzitzis, likra shema, to kriya shema, ulahaniach tefillin, to put on tefillin. So what is this? It's interesting. So Bilam's saying we're like a lion in the morning and that we put on tzitzis, we daven, we put on tefillin. Beautiful. Okay. What about this? There's a whole bunch of other mitzvahs. We keep Shabbos, we keep kashrus, right? We don't wear shatnez, we put up mezuzahs. Why these? And I think what Bilam understood is because the power of the Jew is in the shura, is in the regilos, is in the scheduling. Because what does a Jew do every single morning? Lilbosh tzitzis, likra shma, lahaniach tefillin. It does not matter what else is happening in life. The day is always going to start the same way. It's always going to start with moda'ani. It's always going to start with tzitzis. It's always going to start with tefillin. It's always going to start with shema. That's the way the day of the Yid starts. And that's why, by the way, the one day of the year where it doesn't start like that, which is Tisha B'Av, where we don't have tefillin in the morning, there's such a disruption to it. Bilam understood what's the power of the Jew. The power of the Jew is to maintain a sense of consistency, a seder, an order, a schedule. It's been the same thing for thousands of years. What does my father do in the morning when he gets up? Kriya Shema, tzitzis, tefillin. What did my grandfather do? Kriya Shema, tzitzis, tefillin. What did my great-great-grandfather do? Kriya Shema, tefillin, tzitzis. What did 17 generations do? Kriya Shema, tefillin, tzitzis. 2,000 years ago, what did they do? Kriya Shema, tefillin, tzitzis. Bilam understood that a people who has a shura, a people who has a seder, a people who have an order, a people who have a plan, those are going to be a people. That is a people that you cannot conquer because they have directed vision, because they are planners, because they have a seder, a shura, an order. And even if we have to pivot, we'll pivot. But we'll just pivot to a different plan. But there is always a plan. There's always an order. There's always a seder. This is what Bilam saw in us as the greatest accolade for Klal Yisrael. They wake up every single morning and they have a plan. They may not know what the coming day is going to bring. And they may not know how many times they'll have to pivot over the course of the day. But one thing is clear. We begin the day with a clearly defined plan and sense of purpose for ourselves. That's what Bilam understood about us. It's what Avram Avinu had. And yes, it's even what Bilam himself had until unfortunately he went off the rails. And Chevra, it's what makes us successful as well. Sometimes people like to say they live life by the seat of their pants. I would venture to say that if you did a little bit of an analysis of a person's life after 120 who lived life by the seat of their pants, I would venture to say that they accomplished very little. Because true life accomplishment and true self-actualization requires planning, requires a seder, requires a shura, requires an order. That when I wake up in the morning, what's the plan for today? What's the plan for the week? What's the plan for the month? What's the plan for the year? Again, is it going to change a million times over? Yes, I'll have a million different plans. But at no point in life can I ever be without a plan. At no point in life can I ever be without a sense of purpose, a shura. And our Pinchas Ben Yair teaches us that. If you want to get to the finish line, whatever the finish line is, because the Gemara Machlokes is the highest level Chasidus, is the highest level Anava, whatever it is, one thing is clear. If you want to get forward in life, you got to have a plan to get from A to B to C to D to E. And only those who have that shura, only those who have that plan, only those who have that seder will be Zochei Meretz Hashem to accomplish great things in life. Bilam saw that we have this power in us, in ourselves. Maybe be Zochei Meretz Hashem to bring it out. Maybe Zochei Meretz Hashem to make a beautiful, holy, personal plan. And Meretz Hashem in the zchus of our personal plans, may HaKadosh Baruch Hu Meretz Hashem bring his plan to fruition and actualization as well. The plan of Mashiach, the plan of Geula, the plan of Kibbutz Golios, the plan of Bayis Shlishi, the plan of all of Klal Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. May we zochet to see Rabbi Amenu. Amen.